Spoiler warning! This video spoils up to episode 68 of the anime. This is a show where insane plot twists are a large part of the appeal, so take this warning seriously. If you somehow haven't been spoiled already, I urge you to avoid this video and also the entire internet until you finish the series. Proceed at your own risk. Oh, shit, right, I forgot. Titan warning. There are spoilers and Titans. Okay, I think that's everything. With the exception of some of Season 2's directorial decisions, I think Attack on Titan's aesthetic track record is pretty spotless. You could pick a fight with a few of the character designs if you wanted. It's easy to forget Bertolt isn't a background character. But overall, the art style is distinctive, the animation is gorgeous, the sound design rules, and that music, man! Hiroyuki Sawano is a household name for a reason. Not to mention, Tetsuro Araki is in the director's chair for most of the show, and his calling card is that whenever one of his staff asks him, "Sir, don't you think that's a little too much?" he yells, "Fuck that!" and then adds a little more. His signature touch of intensity makes it nearly impossible not to get lost in the hype or the horror even if you're not a fan of the writing. Although, speaking of, there are a lot more holes to poke when it comes to the actual text of the show. Sections that are appallingly slow, dialogue so ridiculous it goes down in meme history, incredibly simplistic themes being hammered home like there's some grand revelation, etc, etc. However, none of those problems are quite as persistent as the straight-up bizarre way that author Hajime Isayama writes these characters. Hey, get your muscle boys out of here. That's not what I mean by bizarre. What I mean is that these people genuinely seem like alien facsimiles of real humans. Characters have extremely limited sets of behaviors, with most of their personalities being completely dominated by a single trait, and those among the cast with stated motivations chase after them with such absurd dedication they seem outright insane. Which is a problem, because with the exception of Hanji and maybe Eren, I don't think insanity is what Isayama was going for. I'm definitely not the first to pick on Mikasa Ackerman for this, but that's only because she is the most obvious example. This girl is a straight-up lunatic. It works in the Scout's favor most of the time, since the guy she's obsessed with protecting also happens to be, like, the most important guy ever. But man, does she just have nothing else going on. They run out of things to do with her almost immediately, and from there on out, she's relegated to screaming "give Eren back" at whoever kidnapped him this arc, until she can't anymore because this time, the guy who kidnapped Eren is Eren. It seems obvious that having your lead female's entire purpose for existing revolve around your lead male is probably a bad idea unless you're writing parody, but hey, this could have been an opportunity to explore what is effectively severe separation anxiety. For a millisecond, it seemed like that's what they were doing when she had this whole character moment about fighting on anyways because that's what Eren would have wanted, but after that he comes back from the dead and she goes right back to hovering over his shoulder. Deviating from that behavior is extraordinarily rare for her. Nothing else that might motivate her, interest her, distract her, or provoke any kind of emotion from her comes even close to her dedication to this one asshole who clearly doesn't love her the way she loves him. And while Mikasa is definitely the most egregious example of this, she's also a microcosm of the way that most of the other characters are written, with excessive dedication to their motivations and singular traits overpowering everything else about them. Now, there's nothing wrong with these motivations and traits in and of themselves. In fact, most of the characters' surface personalities are pretty lovable, and their motivations are really easy to get behind. After those first few episodes, when Eren says, "I'm gonna fucking kill the Titans," it's supremely difficult not to buy into that premise. The problem comes when you don't expand on those surface level traits and end up with a two-dimensional character. In real life, humans are very complex beings. We contradict ourselves, we chase after multiple goals at once, and we behave differently in different environments. And while Attack on Titan characters imitate this complexity, it usually ends up feeling like there's not actually a whole lot under the hood. And this is a problem, because an audience's investment in characters and what they're going through tends to come from recognizing something of ourselves in what we see on screen, creating empathy, or at least sympathy. So when a character is half-baked, it distances us from them. I think the best example of how this can interfere with compelling drama occurs at the end of Season 2 between Ymir and Historia. Ymir has sided with Reiner and Bertolt, the enemies of humanity, and stolen Historia away for herself to go beyond the walls with them. Ymir then begs Historia to come quietly, because otherwise Ymir will be killed for complicated bloodline reasons I'm not going to get into. Now, in a normal anime, you would expect Historia to be highly conflicted. After all, Ymir has clearly been hiding quite a bit of information from her, and not all of it makes sense yet. I mean, seriously, Historia doesn't even know what is outside the walls at this point. She doesn't have the same reasons to believe humanity is fucked that Ymir does, and she is a soldier. She survived Trost and joined the Scouts, witnessing some of humanity's first ever victories, and even making some friends that aren't Ymir. So you'd expect her to at least have some baseline loyalty to humanity. However, her implicitly romantic feelings for Ymir are quite strong, not to mention that Ymir has completely dropped her cocksure persona to beg wholeheartedly for her help, telling her that she'll die if she doesn't get it. It's quite the dilemma, plagued by a lack of information and time to think, tearing Historia in two as she struggles to decide between... I'm just kidding. She sides with Ymir without the slightest hesitation, committing insubordination, betraying humanity, and happily going along with the people responsible for the vast majority of deaths she's ever witnessed. What should have been a complicated and understandable moment of intense drama is oversimplified by Historia's overly singular motivation. And this sort of thing happens a lot, although it causes slightly differing narrative problems in different scenarios. For example, why are Eren's first two big character moments about overcoming an unwillingness to fight the Titans? What the actual fuck is up with that? During the Trost arc, Eren gets trapped in this lazy state of mind inside a fantasy world where nothing bad ever happened ever. But was wanting to pretend everything was okay, or not being able to let go of the past, ever Eren's problem before now? Why is he suddenly afflicted by a character flaw that runs counter to his entire personality? This would work better if Eren was a more complicated person, but he's not. He's the Titan-killing guy. So when you tell me that he's suddenly too lazy to fight them, it's a little hard for me to get invested in the conflict. The second time he struggles to do the only thing he's ever wanted to do since the day humanity received a grim reminder, it's at least a little bit more believable. He doesn't want to fight the female Titan because he doesn't want to accept that someone he has a crush on is responsible for the deaths of his friends. But here's where the two-dimensional nature of these characters comes back to bite Isayama in the ass, because you want me to believe that Eren has a crush on Annie? Seriously? Someone who scoffs at his ideals and throws him on his ass throughout basic training and then isn't a significant part of his life after that? I'm sorry, but this is Eren we're talking about. Teenager or no, the idea of this kid getting aroused by anything that isn't a Titan corpse is something I can't buy into, especially at this point in the story. And I know it's never explicitly stated because Isayama hates explicit romance, so you can argue his hesitation here is only because he's friends with Annie. But I still don't buy that. Again, all they had was a few moments in basic training where she honestly seems like more of an antagonist than a friend, an ideological opposite to Eren's optimistic resolve. And then they don't really talk after that. That's not an established relationship, that's an established acquaintance. We're told that Eren cares about her, but we don't know why. And I can't even believe that some unspoken relationship has been stewing off screen, because everywhere else in the show so far, Eren is so singular in his drive. What's especially hilarious, though, is that Isayama can't even commit to overly singular motivations like Eren's, because, strangely, there are a number of moments across the show where characters make decisions for the sake of the plot that don't seem like something that character would actually do. Ymir realizes that the only thing she really cares about is Historia's safety because she's in love with her, implicitly, and that there actually could be a future inside the walls. Also, Historia turns Ymir's own advice against her and tells her to live for herself. So, immediately, Ymir abandons Historia and runs off with Reiner and Bertolt straight to her death. Why did she do that? Not because that's something she would do, but because the information that Ymir knows would ruin the surprise in the basement, so she can't stick around to aid the scouts. And she can't just die in battle because Marley needs to get the Jaw Titan back, so... suicide. Levi choosing to save Armin rather than Erwin also falls into this category, although at least there I can buy into the difficulty of the choice and partially appreciate the emotions behind his decision. Okay. Now let's do the part of the video where I address all of the sweeping generalizations I've made. Attack on Titan has a lot of characters, there are going to be some exceptions. To name a few, Armin, Jean, Erwin, and Hannes all feel like real people. Jean had an actual character arc, one that was genuinely moving, and Erwin is especially interesting as someone who definitely possesses one of those singular motivations, but whose insane heroism is contrasted with his willingness to stand on a mountain of corpses. As the series goes on, you get a better grasp on how how his endless determination and willingness to sacrifice everything for humanity is actually quite villainous, how his more selfish instincts shape the world's military politics, and how, as the show frequently posits, it's hard to get shit done without being a little fucking evil. Do the ends justify the means? I don't think Isayama believes that, but Erwin definitely does. Then there's the Titan shifters. Annie, Reiner, Bertolt, and to a lesser extent Ymir are some of the most complex and interesting characters in the entire cast, with Reiner being easily the best character in the show. However, it's difficult to appreciate this in most of the places where it matters because so much of their true selves and what's driving them is shrouded in mystery. In fact, Attack on Titan is a fantastic example of how mystery can obfuscate drama and lighten the emotional load. The look on Bertolt's face whenever Reiner starts acting like a true soldier hits like a freight train, but only if you know why, and you don't find out why until after the point in the story where he kind of stops doing that. And even once you start to get a handle on how these characters are feeling, the secrecy surrounding their origins and motivations makes it difficult to get invested in their drama. You're too busy wondering what's going on to emote alongside them, and it sucks because there are plenty of moments in the show that would really benefit from both characters arguing with everything out in the open. This is part of why Reiner and Eren's conversation in the final season kicks so much ass. Point is, the inner complexity of the Titan shifters is something you can only fully appreciate in retrospect. However, with all that being said, Attack on Titan's character work has definitely improved over time. Season 3, in particular, is full of characters having to make genuinely difficult decisions and dramatic conflicts impossible to look away from. As an admitted shipper, I hate to say it, but Historia is a lot more interesting when Ymir isn't around for her to obsess over, and she proves she's a queen long before it becomes official when she makes the harder choice and swats that vial out of her dad's hand. Meanwhile, Eren shows this sudden tender side, and later loses faith in himself for reasons I can actually buy into. Meanwhile, Levi gets pushed to his breaking point only for the rest of the squad to bring him back from the brink with the power of friendship, and everyone else has to confront just how far they're willing to go for that Scouting Legion ideal of freedom, something that's going to become important later. But, on the topic of what comes later, what inspired me to make this video is that even though the show has been steadily improving since season 1, some of the problems with the show's approach to character work have persisted into the final season. Let's start with our new main character, Falco. I like him. He's down to earth, which is a smart choice considering how he takes Eren's place as a hopeful young boy witnessing a horrifying attack on his nation. His instincts and misgivings are very human, and they ground us throughout all of this craziness. And, like most of the motivations in this show, his is easy to get behind. Gabby is pretty great. I'd want to protect her from a premature death too. She's got a good mix of personality traits and behaviors in different scenarios, making her feel a lot less flat than a lot of Attack on Titan's cast. And their friendship does have a certain relatable charm. But here's where the problems start. Falco's dedication to saving Gabby is something that would work a lot better if his attachment to her was something more clearly established and built. As of right now, we know that Falco's in love with her, and we know his feelings are strong enough that he's willing to throw his life away for her, but just like with Eren and Annie, we don't know why. So Falco's Attack on Titan brand overly singular motivation seems even more insane than usual. Up until episode 8, I wouldn't have said that Gabby has one of those incredibly singular motivations. Yeah, she wants to be the next Armored Titan, but she expresses a pretty good range of desires that may not be as intense as that central one, but definitely round her out. That is, until episode 8, when she goes batshit crazy and decides to embark on a suicide mission because she's so obsessed with getting revenge, she's willing to throw literally everything away just to kill maybe 3 people if she's lucky. I get it, she's a kid, she's traumatized, her head is swimming with propaganda, and maybe she doesn't care about being the next Armored Titan anymore, because the only reason she wanted to do that was to make people believe that Eldians can be good, something she no longer feels is possible after this attack. But still, this decision is so irrational, it doesn't track, even with all of the justification that the text provides. If she wants revenge this badly, you'd think that she'd redouble her efforts to become the next Armored Titan, and seek to work with Marley to completely destroy all of the Paradise Eldians. But nah, she's just gonna go die. What's even stranger is that she had plenty of time to think about this decision. I could totally see her rushing blindly to her death if she was just lashing out in immediate irrational anger. But even after Falco grabs her, we see those tears in her eyes, and she has a moment to calm down and explain how she's feeling, she still makes this ridiculous decision. Please, understand, I'm not complaining about her tactics, I'm complaining that she knows she'll fail and fully expects to die from this, which is strange, because she's been established as bold, not suicidal, but Isayama needs those kids on that airship, so a character makes a decision that they wouldn't have actually made for the sake of the plot. But let's move on from those two, because there aren't just problems with the new characters. No, sir. Let's talk about Sasha, who once cheated death when an editor begged Isayama for her survival, only for the Grim Reaper to finally catch up with her. Shot dead by the new girl, which means it's time for a witch hunt! Everybody grab your pitchforks, let's all go get excessively mad at a fictional character that does not exist, even though the story we're all screaming about is actively using shifting perspectives to create themes about how these exact hateful instincts are deeply harmful to just about everyone, including ourselves. Where have I seen this before? Dumbasses aside, this is clearly a tragic, avoidable set of circumstances, and it left me with a 1,000-yard stare for a good couple hours. But man, if this isn't emblematic of the show's approach to character writing, I don't know what is. Look at how they try to get tears out of us, by reminding us that Sasha's entire character was food right from her first appearance to her last breath. And yeah, there is some sadness there. Potato Girl isn't going to be around to talk about food at inappropriate times anymore. And yet, I've been watching and reading about this character for longer than I've known some of my closest friends. And the sadness I feel watching her tragically perish is severely hindered by the fact that the last thing she said was meat. Any other writer would use this as an opportunity to highlight how far she's come. Yeah, she's mostly a two-dimensional comic relief character, and not even a particularly funny one at that, but she's been through a lot alongside Connie and Jean, joining the Scouts despite her fear, that weird little subplot about her hick accent that never comes up again, turning into a hardened killer in the name of freedom, not to mention forging an actual bond with these shitheads. If her final words to Connie and Jean referenced that relationship, somehow showed how she's grown, expressed some sort of regret, or specifically mentioned a previous emotional moment, it would jerk a lot more tears than using her last words to tell us, "Hey, in case you forgot, that's the one that likes food." And yet, this same episode contains this great little acknowledgement of their relationship when Sasha touches Connie's hand. Also, Isayama pulled this amazing trick where he pointed at this ugly-ass quadrupedal titan that came out of fucking nowhere during the Battle of Shiganshina and said, "You see that? That's your favorite character." And I said, "That fucking thing?" As if. Except he was right, I would die for her. And that's not even mentioning that Eren, Mikasa, and Armin keep having these entire conversations without saying a word, just communicating perfectly how they feel through facial expressions and body language alone. See, this is why I say bizarre instead of just bad. Looking at this series as a whole, there's definitely stuff that doesn't work as well as it could, but not only is there a lot of great stuff in there too, the weirder choices clearly work on some level. People love these characters, and not just because of the show's popularity. People love them at least as much as your average My Hero student or Shonen Boy of the Year. That's why it's weird. Because well-written characters are such an important part of long-running shows, a frequent disregard of basic dramatic principles should have been the death of Attack on Titan. And while it certainly was for a lot of people, and I believe it's far from a masterpiece, I also wouldn't change a single thing about it. What can I say? Sometimes stories are exceptional, even if I can't figure out exactly why. But if I had to guess, it probably has something to do with how the world is so cold and unforgiving towards these strange characters. There are so many people who die before we even get to know them on the minimal two-dimensional level that Attack on Titan normally provides. They express one or two positive traits, sometimes not even that, and then boom, they're gone. Dramatic deaths like Sasha's are rare. Most of them are more like Marco, or Squad Levi, or Sophia and Udo. Before you've even realized what you're looking at, a person's life has been extinguished right in front of you. Every death is yet another person who won't get to experience the freedom from this hellish warfare that presumably waits at the end of the journey. And yet, the nature of that warfare means that for so many individuals, brave and cowardly, good and bad, death is startlingly swift. This world does not have time for complexity, for nuanced emotional soul-searching, for explicit sexuality, or for little happily ever afters. All of what we get is weaved into the narrow cracks between the rampant destruction and loss. Tragedy on such a scale, we're not equipped to fully comprehend it. So of course the only ones who make it particularly far are the ones with passion that borders on insanity, whose obsession with fighting against their horrific circumstances drives drives them beyond impossibility. And even they are far from invincible. No amount of anger or desire for freedom is going to save Eren and Armin as Titan shifters from simply running out of time. This world is cruel, and as long as these people fight against its very nature, their lives will burn bright and short.